calling us to order. To start, has attendance been taken?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So next up, we need to vote for a closed session for discussion of real estate. Can I get a motion to move to closed session?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Oh, it's a roll call vote.
Trustee Campbell?
Yes.
Trustee Hadley?
Yes.
Trustee Kleiman?
Yes.
Trustee Silva?
Yes.
Trustee Trudeau?
Yes.
All right, we're going to move to closed session. Thanks, everyone.
Be back at 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
Yes.
All right,
Can
we
you
are
read
going to
this, Kashi?
reconvene to our
Oh yeah, I know that one.
meeting.
It says
Has
parasol.
attendance
That's
been taken?
right. And a parasol is like an
Next
umbrella
up,
that we use to
calling for a
protect us
motion
from
to
the
approve
sun.
the agenda.
Great.
So moved.
Well, are
Second.
you ready for
All right,
the
all
sun?
those in favor of approving the agenda, please say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed? Agenda is approved. Next up, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed? Okay, consent agenda passes. Next up, public comment. Do we have any public comments? Okay, next up, financial report with Eli.
Okay, your financial reports are loose this month, so that's a separate piece of paper. You may have heard me talking about us moving to a new accounting system. We are really wanting to move to a new accounting system because we had a problem entering journal entries, which caused this to not make the packet last week. However, when we post this online, we will fold this in so that it will all be in the same place. Just a couple highlights here. So the orange line that you can see at the first page is the cash balance for this year so far. It went down this month because of the two transfers that you approved last month out of the general fund into the capital fund and the special projects fund, respectively. So far, we have received 99.1% of our budgeted revenue, which is good for this time of year. So again, we expect that to go a little over 100 by the time we get to the end of the year. Our unassigned fund balance stands at $6.5 million. That's 4 months of operation, so about 33% of our annual budget. Can go a little lower, but that's a good spot to be. On the next page, so our revenues are 34% of budget after 33% of the fiscal year, mostly driven by strong investment returns. We budgeted very conservatively on investment returns, and we have had some investment returns, so that puts us in a good position moving forward. Year-to-date expenditures so far are 30.1% of the budget after 33% of the fiscal year, running a little bit behind just where we want to be. And we're going to have a finance committee meeting sometime in the next couple of months, and one of the things we'll be talking about is what to do with the various small funds. So some of these have been sitting for a very long time, and it's a good opportunity to be talking about and have a strategy on how we might put those to use. Skipping ahead to the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes. One thing just to draw your attention to, as I said, we've already received $150,000 of investment gains. We only budgeted $50,000 for the whole year, but this past month it was actually negative. So that's just to show that you never know where that's going to go, and we'll see how the rest of the year winds up. Copier revenues running a little bit ahead, but it was extremely low expectation, only $7,500 for the whole year. Library fines and fees running a little bit ahead, which is good. And non-resident fees pretty much right on the money. So we see after 33% of the fiscal year, we've gotten 34% of our revenue. Then just to look down expenditures and see those of them that are above 33%, you can see personnel is just below 30%, right where we want it to be, in a good position. Accounting and audit over, because basically the audit costs were all front loaded, so that'll be falling back into order over the course of the year. Copier expense running a little bit ahead, so that one might need an adjustment, but again, that's a total of $35,000 over the course of the year. And just reminding that we do not bring in as much money from the copier revenue as we spend, and most people are only printing a couple copies, so it's just a nice service, but something that doesn't quite pay for itself. Legal expense, just a little bit ahead. We'll see if that needs an adjustment as we get closer to the end of the year. Repairs and maintenance running a little bit ahead, but that has had some big ticket items go through. Utilities, as we've been saying, has been running a little bit ahead. It's hard for us to anticipate exactly what the plaza would cost to operate, so that might need adjustment as we get to the end of the year. And capital outlay, that's just about what expenditures we've had so far this year. But overall, you can see we're at 30% of our expenditures after 33% of the year. So that's where we like to be. And then just on the very last page on the back, if you just skip all the way down to the bottom line, shows where the unassigned balance is. That's a $6.5 million fund balance, $92,000 in the special projects fund, $2.6 million in the capital fund, and about $500,000 spread across the grants and memorials funds. And that's our cash balance. Any questions about any of that? All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Eli. Next up, we have committee reports. Executive committee, this time I double-checked, we really didn't meet this month. It was a short month because of the early meeting for the holidays. So next up is Budget and Finance Committee.
From the budget and finance front, Eli had mentioned that we're going to soon have a meeting in a couple of months to discuss all of these small sort of donor restrictions, designations, things like that, these small pools of money essentially, to ensure that we're doing something more meaningful, I would say, with them rather than just having them set.
And we'll also be bringing to the Finance Committee a draft of an RFP for new auditors.
Wonderful. That concludes my report.
Great, thanks, Aiden. Next up, Facilities Committee.
Yep, so we met on November 5th. A bunch of little things. We got an update on the vending machine contract, so in the change in the coffee situation downtown, so the coffee machines were not maintainable and will not be maintained by the new vendors, so we're trying some.
So we'll see how that goes,
alternates.
and then
see how
we'll
that goes,
decide if
yeah.
we're going to try an alternate solution.
Yeah, so that's a change. We got an update on the what's happening with the bricks and the exterior cladding, which we have another update on the agenda tonight, so we'll hear the latest on that later this evening. We talked about the plaza. Yeah, we talked about the potential for the outbuilding for storing batteries and those. So we're keeping the batteries out of the building that we have our archives in, just for fire risk. And so we're kind of talked through some of the scenarios of the different forms of buildings that we might consider putting in place, and we'll expect to see more from staff on that in terms of what, as we start to get an idea of what makes sense for that solution going forward. So that's still in development to kind of think about what kind of building we might want to build there. Got an update on the project next door, just, updates on what's going on. Like their shed was blocking the bike lane and the view of the bike lane and things like that. But so far, nothing major. Yeah, and then we got an update that the zoning postcards had gone out for the D1 resident engagement preliminary meeting, which will be here tomorrow, for us to apply for rezoning of this parcel to D1, for us to figure out what we're going to do.
So the blue line is Westgate, the red line is the downtown library, the green line is Mallett's Creek, the orange line is Traverwood, and the yellow line is Pittsfield, which was not a voting location at all during this cycle. Pittsfield had relocated their location to another facility. So one of the things that you can see here, something that has never, ever happened before, is there was one day where there were more people at Mallett's Creek than at the downtown library. And that never happens. But in the middle of voting, that happened. You can see spikes at the beginning on the first day of early voting and on the last day of early voting. You can also see we had almost identical number of people through the door at Mallett's Creek and Traverwood on the first and the last day. But throughout, Mallett's was a little bit busier than Traverwood. You can also see Westgate was crazy busy the whole time through. On the first day of early voting, when many of us were out there, they had 2,500 people through the door out there, which is just a very busy day at Westgate Branch. But you can also see the next day, that was the 26th was the first day. The 27th was the day of our costume contest at the downtown library. So that's the big red spike. The first big red spike was the downtown costume contest and the tree parade. Then downtown was pretty quiet while other things were happening at other locations. But you can see that other spike on the last day of early voting was Book Fest, because downtown was not an early voting location. You can see then downtown goes down one day and then back up, because then that's the actual day, election day, that second spike after the big spike there. So, again, just a couple of takeaways here is that downtown and Westgate, left to their own devices, usually are very close in attendance, like sometimes almost within 10 people of each other on many days. But when there's an event, that changes things and you see more people coming in and out. And then the three branches generally have very similar attendance to each other, but downtown and Westgate very much similar. So I wanted to kind of look there at 2024 downtown room use at a glance, because one of the big issues is that we do a lot of turning people away, a lot of turning away of organizations, a lot of turning away of partners when they have a date in mind where they've already chosen, and sometimes we do not have room to offer them on that date. So just 2024 room use at a glance, and this is just since January 1st of 2024. So the downtown library was open 316 days so far. During that time, we had 984 room bookings. That's not counting patron bookings. That's just partner bookings and library bookings. What that means is there were 263 days, or 83% of days, when room use was in contention, meaning that we had more than one booking going and we had to work around that, including 96 days, 30%, where there were 4 or more downtown bookings, and we only have really 3 meeting rooms. So this is the challenge of operating. I mean, if you count the secret lab in there, but generally partners aren't using the secret lab. But the other part of it is how much effort is required to reconfigure the lobby. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, especially we don't have a freight elevator, we only have the public elevator. So all the stuff that's in the lobby, when we have to clear out and set that up to the lobatorium, we have to go up and down the elevator like 25, 30 times each way, just to be able to get all that stuff off the first floor, because you can really only fit 1 or 2 carts on the elevator at a time. Just in terms of overall scale, we had 83 downtown events in 2024 so far with over 100 attendees, meaning basically 2 a week, including 24 events with over 200 attendees, or roughly 1 every other week, and then 11 events with over 500 attendees and 8 events with over 1,000 attendees, and that's just in this building. So, it's something that we work with all the time, always trying to make the most use of the space, but we know that there is a lot of demand from our partners, from other organizations, from community groups to meet at the downtown library, and we are often unable to meet that demand because of capacity issues in the building. So I had said we were going to be talking about use of the downtown library and places in which we're constrained, and this is a big one of them. There's just not enough spaces in which the building, and many of the spaces are improvised. The lobatorium, we're able to fit 300 people in there, but it's not comfortable, and it's not good sight lines, and it's not good audio, and it's not good accessibility. So all those things together are things that are very challenging for us to handle in the current structure and, the 1 elevator, all that kind of stuff. So just all that to say, it's a very busy place and there's a lot of, we're climbing all over each other. So some upcoming events here. Here's one of our Ann Arbor 200 events I'm very excited about. It's called Last Summer. It's a new 1-act play. The subtitle is Heisenberg, Fermi, Ann Arbor, and the Bomb. It's about a real conversation that took place in 1939 at a house in Ann Arbor when Fermi was trying to convince Heisenberg not to go back to Nazi Germany, where he would be forced to work on the atomic bomb. This was a new play written by Jim Ottaviani, who's a local comics writer, has written many award-winning books. I asked him if he would like to write a play. It's not that different from writing comics, and he said he would like to give it a try. And the result is outstanding. It's a short play. It's only about 20 minutes long, and we're partnering with Ann Arbor Civic Theater on this, and it's just coming together beautifully. This weekend, we went to take a picture of the cast where this picture was taken, the house in Ann Arbor, where this conversation took place, which now belongs to a different set of university professors than it belonged to in 1939. So we recreated this photo of Heisenberg and Fermi. So that's coming up. The premiere is Saturday, December 7th, 2 p.m., and then there's a second performance Wednesday, December 11th at 6:30, and I hope you'll all come see that show in the lobby. Tiny Expo is coming up Saturday, December 14th, 11 a.m. to 6 p.m., now on 2 floors. We have almost doubled the size of Tiny Expo, and we still turned away over 200 vendors. So that is on the first floor and the second floor on Sunday, December 14th. And then the next day, Sunday, December 15th, is Whopper out at the plaza. That's the Washtenaw Area Pickup Robotics. Great way for kids to discover sort of what lies ahead of them in middle and high school robotics. And it's a great, very fun event for our patrons and for all the robotics teams in the community. We've got 8 robotics teams signed up. I think they're bringing 12 or 13 robots, and it should be a good time had by all. Any questions so far? Okay. Here's some new AADL releases at the Ann Arbor Community Book Fest on November 3rd. Fifth Avenue Press celebrated the release of 9 new works by local authors. We've now helped to release 60 books since our founding of the press in 2017. Here's the photos of a couple of them. On the left there, you can see the Four Families book, which we did in partnership with AACHM. The middle is it's called autofiction when you write a slightly fictionalized version of your own life. It's called The Northeast Corner by Colby Halloran. It's a beautiful book, very nicely done. And then next to that is Zoftig by Molly Pershing-Rayner, and it's a book of poems. And you can just see next to that Zmagria, another book of poems. And these are all new releases. You can find them in our catalog. You can download them to keep, or you can also at fifthavenue.press find a way to purchase them from the authors. Last week, we celebrated the dedication of our new Black History Bicentennial mural. It was installed on Library Lane. You should all have a look at it. It looks terrific. These were all recreations of photos from our archives by different local authors. Avery Williams was our coordinator, Williamson's, and she helped work with artists who used photos from AADL's archives and interpreted them in their own styles. So there's 8 panels that are on the fence, and 2 more will go up at the archives. The old mural will also be hung at the archives in the warehouse volume. So it'll be permanently on display out there. So we're very excited. We had a great turnout for the event on Friday night, and a good time was had by all. And it's really a wonderful project. All right, now we're going to catch up on Ann Arbor 200. Number 152 was Mary Marcello's hand-drawn look at thousands of years of natural history in Ann Arbor. It's a natural Ann Arbor map. Number 153, AADL talks to Deb Pollock, who's the president and CEO of Creative Washtenaw. She talks about the many community changes projects she's been involved with and the changes in the art scene over the years. Number 154 is a documentary about the Loop of Pain, which is something that bike people are aware of. It's Jen Proctor takes us on a ride through the history of mountain biking in Ann Arbor and the creation, sometimes unsanctioned, of the collection of trails known as the Local Loop or the Loop of Pain. And it's a great documentary about the bike scene. Number 155 is a Huron River Seance, psychogeographic performances by the river with Turtle Disco. That's a short film documenting a poem and performance responding to the history of pollution in the Huron River. Number 156, AADL talks to newspaper veteran and media relations director Jeff Larkham about his life and that of his father, fabled city administrator Guy Larkham, for whom the Larkham Building is named for. Number 157, we published all the issues from 1973 to 1979 of Art Fair magazine, including an interview with its creators. Number 158 was a documentary from filmmaker Fred Culpepper about our Monuments project back in the fall. Has great interviews with the subjects, video of it being installed, and a great record of the whole project, which was really very ephemeral. So it's great to have that documented of how that all came together and a lot of further information from the subjects about their lives and how they felt to be selected for it. Number 159 is a 6-song EP by local singer-songwriter Timothy Monger, all about his personal history in Ann Arbor. There's a song about Vets Park. There's a song about the post office on Liberty Street. There's a bunch of really cool, fun little songs that's called Last Known Address, number 159. Number 160, director Cameron Donald takes us through the story of DeLong's Pit Barbecue. Barbecue Pit, one of Ann Arbor's most famed bygone eateries, and that's a great documentary called DeLong's, and you can watch that on our website. Number 161, AADL talks to Sylvia Nolasco Rivers, the owner of Pilar's Tamales, about her years running the restaurant and her creation of the nonprofit Pilar's Foundation. Number 162 came out on Friday. That's the Black History Bicentennial mural. You can see the photographs that each image was based on. You can see some information about the artist. You can see that all. That's project number 162. Number 163 is the Old Jewish Burial Ground, the story of Ann Arbor's first Jewish burial ground and the lost Jewish community who created it. This also includes the story of there was a Jewish tombstone that was being used as a doorstep at a fraternity. That was uncovered during a renovation. And it's part of that story as well. So that's by local author Dave Eric Nelson, and that's an interesting read as well. And that catches us up to number 163, which means there are 37 more projects to be released in the next 6 weeks. So stay tuned for all of those as that all comes together and the project hits its fever pitch. So here's our staff spotlight for this month. This is Darla Welshens. She's an archives technician, 17 years at AADL. I attended St. Thomas on State Street for elementary and middle school way back in the 1980s. When I was 12, I started walking to the downtown library every day at dismissal and would hang out there until my parents finished work and picked me up. The Ann Arbor Public Library, AAPL at that time, was my home away from home. When I was in 8th grade, volunteering at a local organization was a requirement to graduate from St. Thomas, and I naturally chose to volunteer at the library. I really have no idea why they gave a 13-year-old any responsibilities, but the youth department agreed to me working a regular volunteer shift. When I moved on to high school, they hired me as a shelver in the youth department. My very first paycheck came from the APL. I was an 80s teen with a terrible perm and a totally gnarly knowledge of the Dewey Decimal System. Life took me away to college and through a bajillion different jobs and career paths. 20-some years later, some weird sort of fate brought me back to the Ann Arbor Library System. I guess this is where I'm supposed to be. I love working in the archives. Digging up weird bits of history every day is always an adventure. That being said, I'm one of the faces behind Ann Arbor 200 and look forward to taking a vacation in January and heavily napping when this massive project is finally complete. Darla has done a number of the sort of deep dives on history, especially the older history projects, and you can recognize her story with the images spread out on either side. She's also very much our greatest expert in genealogy, and often when people are trying to find a grave or any sort of genealogical information, Darla excels at finding their answer to that. And that's why we call her the Queen of the Dead. All right. Here's our mention of the month from Lauren Bloom on, I think this was on Instagram. Thanks to AADL and the poll workers for making early voting possible. And she is one of the owners of Blom Meadworks. Here's our compliment of the month. One of the volunteers observing the voting came to the desk to compliment the library on the space itself, the native plantings outside, and how smooth the early voting process and setup has been here. She was effusive in her praise. Commented, Traverwood Branch, October 29th. Here's our complaint of the month. Patron contacted Communications and Marketing to ask if AADL had an app like YDL, Ypsilanti Library, that they could use on their brand new iPad. College stated they're a frequent user of the library and they appreciate clicking the YDL button to go directly to the catalog and their holds versus visiting AADL on the web browser and signing in. So we will not be making a native app. Basically, the problem is that nobody ever updates their apps. And that once you issue an app, then it's very difficult to maintain them and keep them all working. Our website, our web native skin is the solution for mobile uses. It works very well at mobile resolution. And whoever helped her install the app could also help her save her AADL My Account page to her home screen, and then it's just like an app. So we have no plans to make native support. Another thing I just might mention is that the vendor that provides YDL's app had a nationwide outage a couple of weeks ago, and we were getting calls asking if our website was working, which of course it was, but they had heard that library websites were all down because the vendor that provides apps to many libraries is down. So lots of reasons not to go with a native app on that platform. Any questions about that? All right. So we've got a library story of the month for you. I can't guarantee we'll always have a library story of the month, but when this happened, we just had to share it. This is from an incident report. 2 high school-aged teenagers came to Westgate Circulation Desk, set a coconut on it, and asked for a drill to drain the coconut. This writer informed them that AADL did not have a drill and suggested renting one from a home supply store. They then asked Sweetwater staff the same question and were likewise sent away empty-handed. Several minutes later, this writer saw the 3 teens in the youth area by the nonfiction books, attempting to knock down several books stood up as makeshift bowling pins. The bowler rolled the coconut and missed. This writer stopped the coconut, said this was inappropriate behavior in the library, and told them to put the coconut away until they left the library. They apologized and left through the front entrance a few moments later. Just another day at the library. And that's the report for this month.
I had a question.
Yes.
About Tiny Expo.
Sure.
Does application success rate for vendors factor in at all to the application process? Or I'm like, if somebody has been rejected a number of times, does that have any bearing on whether or not they're...
Slightly. It's one of the factors. There's a lot of it is that overall quality of applicants, balance of different types of work, whether they've been in the show many times or not. However, in some cases, there are show regulars that people expect to find there. Sure. So in some cases, that's actually a positive if they've been in the show many times. But we are always trying. We also focus mainly on more local people. We do get applicants from Ohio or from further away in Michigan, and they tend be a harder chance unless they've got something really unique to bring to the table. But it's basically the jurying process is very much driven by the price points, the variety of stuff, how professional their work is, and sort of like the overall mix of different types of art that is in the show. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks. Just generally curious.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Eli. Next up, we have an update on the exterior and structural system of the downtown library with Len.
Good evening. So I think you got an update last month when I was not here. The original opening, they were able to secure the metal. They were able to put brick ties on everything and close up that original opening. This last month, they have continued on the horizontal, that deflection we all saw that was actually, possibly going to fall off the building. That's been opened up, that's been closed. The remedy was the same, to put new brick ties in, tie everything back. That's complete. By Wednesday of this week, they'll have everything washed and cleaned up on the south side of the building. Meeting Wednesday to discuss the next steps, which will be those 10 openings we talked about, and probably mesh and strapping along that deflection point, because we know we're seeing the same thing along the 91 addition to the building. So I'm calling them phase 1 and phase 2 are complete. The parts that were the most dangerous, where we had possible bricks could fall off the building, that's been remedied. Moving on to exploration and to make sure the building is in the condition we assume it is in all locations. But I think the remedy will be fixing that deflection point with some type of securing with that, or it's going to be brick replacement. That's what it'll turn into.
And they're not addressing the problems from the water infiltration. This is just about attaching the brick more securely.
Where they have done the infill, it does improve that because it has the new flashing detail. So Terracon did provide detail for the repair, and it does include new flashing. But that where we haven't opened it up, it's the same detail from '91. So any place we have fixed, it has tiebacks, it has new flashing. So it's improved in those locations. So that original location, it does have new flashing in it.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So what kind of like shelf life does something like the tiebacks or the new flashing have? Is it like a year, 3 years, 5 years?
What we've done there would be decades.
Okay, good to
Yeah.
know.
Because now we're into the original steel, right?
Yeah.
Not the facade, and so those sections are now tied back.
Okay, cool.
But it is not, it's not the whole wall.
Yeah, we'd have to do the whole
It's
wall
that
for it to
repair
be.
point, so it's probably 40 feet long by 3 feet high.
Okay,
It's not the whole section of the building. It's definitely a repair.
thank you.
And it's focused on repairing the brick,
Yes.
not on repairing the structural system.
Absolutely. Yep. Any other questions?
Do we think we'll get the exploration and repatching done before winter, or do you?
That's
think
why
it's-
we're meeting Monday. We've had, in just this short time, I think we had 4 weather days that stopped them from working. We just want to have a discussion to talk about weather, the short-term weather. I think there are plenty of days that are going to be well above freezing where they can mix mortar and do repairs. But of course, on their end, they don't want to open anything up and not be able to close it and then be, responsible for anything. We get a hard winter, we get a good hard month of even just rain.
Right.
They don't want to leave it open, so that's really what Wednesday's discussion is how many are we gonna open up, and then what's our, plan for the next 12 months of securing it. But I really do think we're gonna open up these spots, we're gonna find the same thing.
Yeah.
It's securing that deflection area, so it doesn't get as bad as the south side did, and making sure it's secure, whether that be removing or that being that mesh tiebacks we talked about. It's probably gonna be one of those two things.
All right, we'll look forward to hearing how we're doing in January, I guess.
We should know a lot by then.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
Lon.
all so much.
Thanks, Lynn. All right, next up, we have an update on rezoning of the downtown library.
Okay, just a quick update. Tomorrow night is our rezoning citizens participation meeting. 3,800 postcards were sent out on November 4th to reach the people, all addresses or property owners who live within 1,000 feet of the downtown library. A number of them have come back, but we know that they were all mostly received by the Thursday of that week. So all the notifications have gone out. The basic idea of the presentation is that we'll just be showing why the library is requesting this rezoning at this time, what sort of projects other cities have done that we would like to be able to have on the table, and explain why a rezoning is required in order for projects like that to be on the table. And just to summarize it, the current property is public land, which precludes, it's zoned public land, which precludes private use. And some of the scenarios we've talked about have been private developers developing above a new downtown library and using the proceeds from that to fund the new library. So the library would still belong to the board and to the library and to the people, and the land would still belong to the library and the people. But in order to have private homes on the site, it can't be zoned public land. And just as a comparison, none of our other facilities are currently on land zoned public land. Traverwood's zoned office. Malice Creek is zoned R4A, which is residential multifamily. The plaza is zoned light industrial. So it's not, the zoning doesn't say who owns it. The zoning just says what type of uses are allowed. So this will continue to be held by the public in perpetuity. So we'll see what type of questions we get. We will prepare a report, and then we will submit the report of the feedback from the meeting alongside our survey data, alongside our other documents that are required to the planning department to go before the planning commission. The submission will be sometime in December, and then we'll find out when it goes before planning commission. And then from there, if they recommend it, on to city council. So that's the update there. Any questions?
Nope, just excited for it.
Great. All right. Thanks, Eli. Next up, we've got some new business. We've got a fresh package of policy updates. So I think the last time we did a sort of comprehensive review of the policies was in 2019, 2020. And so it's sort of just time to do another round of updates. And I'll hand it off to you.
Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of walk you through these in general. These are mostly housekeeping and small changes. There's a few more substantial things. Tonight, we're just talking about it. We're not getting any feedback from you for the next draft. The next time we meet, we'll be bringing it forward for approval, but of course, it could be tabled or pushed forward from there, as you wish. So, okay, so this starts on page 29 of your packet. First of all, we're adding to the Code of Ethics, which is based on the ALA Code of Ethics. We're just adding to the line about we recognize and respect intellectual property rights, including those granted through the public domain and fair use. So that's just to make it clear that we value public domain and fair use alongside with other property rights. Then we have some changes of changing parents to adults, as well as making reference to or guardians, just in some of our policies about children, just to make sure that we're not assuming a particular relationship there. We are removing from user responsibilities a line about refrain from using the library's internet resources to conduct a business or commercial enterprise. That's something that's just kind of left over from the era before spam ate the entire internet and we still thought we could do something about it. Now that it has eaten the entire internet, it's like there's commercial activity happening at the library all the time. And if people are using our internet to do commercial activity, so long as they're not violating the rules of behavior, that in internet itself isn't a problem. And this is a good example of like, we're catching up policies that haven't been looked at in many years to current practices, current dynamics in many of these situations. Another example here is respecting intellectual property rights by making only authorized copies of copyrighted licensed or otherwise controlled software or data residing on the internet. That's not about our user responsibilities, that's about the law. And we are not setting separate responsibilities within what is allowed by law. So it's basically, there's a overall line here that says that you have to adhere to the law, and we are removing stuff that's about, because pirating software is very much a 90s and noughts sort of problem. Doesn't really have so much of an issue anymore. And there's a couple other changes related to that. Mishnet is no longer called Mishnet, it's just called Merit now, so we're adapting that. We used to have this politeness statement that we would use, and we are removing that from the policy because we don't approach that problem in the same way, and it's not a document that we use anymore. You can see something we approved in 1996. We used to have a little purple card we would hand to people if they were looking at something, but now we handle those sorts of situations in a different way because the state law has changed, and we have a different set of responsibilities than we used to. So we're removing the internet use politeness statement. When it comes to rules of behavior, one thing is I'm changing a couple of references to virtual to online. That's a very 90s way of talking about that. Cyberspace. And just a couple other small changes. We're also changing a lot of the suspension rules were about suspension of library privileges. But now there's library privileges that you can use without coming into the building. And this is really, when we have behavior problems, it's about being in the building. We don't care if you're checking out ebooks or something like that online. It doesn't have any impact on other patrons. So as a result, we're changing revoking of library privileges to revoking of library building access. So if someone violates the rules of behavior, is asked to leave, they can't come in. It doesn't mean that they can't manage their account online or use the New York Times or any one of our online services. Add a reference to the vaporized, to the smoking stuff. One thing is that we are taking out the first three items of the rules of behavior used to have their own process or their own, first offense would be 6 months, second offense would be a year. What we've done instead is we've made them all the same, and we've added a clause that say that we may skip steps when patrons demonstrate a risk to other patrons or staff. So it basically says, here's what would normally happen, but if patrons' behavior is a demonstrated risk, meaning, for example, they cock a fist, or they are, actually getting in an altercation with someone, we may skip steps. We may not go just a week at the first step. We made the reference that prohibits in-person gambling because you can't really know who would know if they are gambling anymore. This was from the era where they were worried that people were going to be shooting craps in the library or things like that. Again, that's not even like a 1990s, more like a 1940s concern. So that's something we've just updated that a little bit because we don't want people gambling in the library. But if they're on their phone, how would we know? Okay. Then we just add a couple things here about flyers and appliances on library property. We have sometimes people are bringing in heaters or toasters or things like that. We really can't allow that for safety reasons. and also prohibiting physical, verbal, or written threats towards patrons and staff. This is something where that puts us in a good position to be able to have policy backup when we are removing someone's library privileges because they've been threatening staff or other patrons. So just another change here. Whenever possible, warnings are given by safety staff. In some cases, you can imagine we're not able to give a warning, but generally we always try to give warnings to people's behavior before we remove their building access. And then, as it says down here, if their presence or conduct on the premises poses immediate, imminent, or ongoing danger to any person or property, we may skip these steps. And the library reserves the right to suspend building access to patrons based on their demonstrated risk to other patrons or library staff. So that's about when they have demonstrated that they are a risk to the peace and the disturbing of library operations. Okay, then just a couple tidying up there. Any questions so far before we keep going? Okay. Budget adjustment policy. This has a lot of process in here, and several of these edits are really removing process and just making sure the policy is in the policy and the processes that the staff develops. So for example, you've seen us bring you board budget adjustments, right? We cannot adjust the line item without actions of the board. So when we bring you a line item, often I will have warned you that it will be coming several months over that time. And then what we just did is kept in the last line that in order to adjust the budget, the board shall discuss in an open meeting all aspects of the budget adjustment and take necessary action. So budget adjustments are still entirely under the direction of the board. It's just there's a lot of process here that isn't necessary about, envisioning ways that a much more complicated set of interactions between library departments than actually exists. Because that was original to the foundation of the library in 1995. So this is adapting the policy to our practice. Any questions about that or concerns? Okay. All right. There's one adjustment to the budget policy. There's a line here about causes overall spending of the district to increase faster than the growth of the community served by the district. Growth is not really clear, like what exactly, how growth is defined. And the first bullet here, plans the expense, we may not cause or allow budgeting which plans the expenditure in any fiscal year of more funds than are projected to receive by the period. Basically, we always have to bring you a balanced budget. In the presence of always bringing you a balanced budget, the growth rate of spending is constrained by that, right? So this line about increases faster than the growth of the community, which is very nebulous, we are proposing to eliminate. Any concerns about that? Okay. The purchasing policy, there's really only one change here, which is on page 39. There's still reference to it being given by publication by 2 insertions in the local media at intervals of 10 and 5 days prior to the time of receiving bids. This still assumes a daily newspaper. And so what we are proposing is to change that to the library, just post it to the library website. We found that when we post bids to the library or bid opportunities to the library website, we are getting bids. And that we're finding that people between the trade publications and things like that are aware of the work available and that there's no longer a need to make sure that it's inserted in print media, which is hard to come by. Okay, let's see. And then one tiny change on page 40, there's an exception to the bid process for vendors that are supplying computer hardware software. And it used to say major library vendors. Well, we don't buy computer hardware software from major library vendors. We just buy them from regular old vendors. So we're just proposing removing major library from that phrase. All right, here's a big change, but it's not actually a operational change. Disposition of salvage property. Half of this is procedure, which shouldn't really be in the policy at all, and it has a lot of detail to it and isn't very realistic, adds a lot of complexity to it. So what we've done instead is removed all the procedure from the policy document and added a statement to the policy about what the board wants to see when we are disposing of idle equipment, which is the new statement is the underlined one here, offering library property to be disposed of directly to the public with the goals of minimizing waste and providing equitable access to former library property. So we want to get it into people's hands. The old rules were very much about like sort of recovering as much value as possible, but the reality is by the time we're done with something, it is nearly worthless. We are removing so much value by the time it's like broken. A lot of the stuff at the equipment sale is broken or gross or poorly used, and it's like, our philosophy has generally been the public already paid for it once. And our goal is to get rid of as much of it as we can without having to pay to have it disposed of. So that's why we've been offering it at very low prices, which the former procedure would not really have allowed. So we're removing the procedure and making sure the goals are there in the policy. Any questions? So all of this next step of pages is just removing the elaborate procedure about disposition of library materials. Or not materials, really equipment, idle equipment. Okay. Insurance of property, I think this was one of the original property policies from 1995 that we didn't catch. It referred to directed by the district electors, and we think they meant by the district library board. So it's basically saying that we need to have insurance, and library administration buys the insurance, the board doesn't buy the insurance, but we will only not insure things if directed not to insure them by the library board, which is hard to imagine. Then a couple changes of treasurer to finance manager. This is foreseeing just an older, greater role for the treasurer in terms of like approving credit card processors, which is very much finance manager territory. Okay, then there's some changes here to pay for performance. This part of the policy was written when the majority of the library was unrepresented, and now it's only management is unrepresented, and HR and executive assistant and interns. So this is basically only governs the compensation of about 20 out of our 220 employees because everyone else is covered by the bargaining agreement. And this is just that was based on the merit pool, which was a whole process because that was a part of the budgetary process. Now that it's a much smaller group of people, doesn't make sense to run it that quite same way. So there's some changes here just to the language to allow us to, because it's still a merit program for the unrepresented staff. So just to make sure that that is in compliance with the policy. That all comes to the board as part of the budget proposal, so that is built in there. Let's see, and then another change to finance manager on page 48. Removal of the software use policy, which again was from an era where piracy was a major concern and that you were able to run unlicensed software, which really is just not a thing that is allowed anymore. By the software makers. So all of that is just removing that. And then there's just a change in the bonus policy. It refers to personnel committee, which is not a standing committee. So that just says library board. Then again, in Social Security, there's a bunch of stuff here that is the procedure of how we keep Social Security numbers safe. So we're removing that from the policy and just keeping the policy statement that says that the library staff will come up with procedures to keep Social Security numbers safe. And then one tiny change to the bylaws. The board bylaws, which is on the very last page here, 54. It's just changing the word citizens comments to public comments. So that's the only change to the bylaws that's needed there. I will note that the bylaws only call for one public comment period, but you can always add more. So our habit of having it at 2 points in the meeting can continue. This is just saying what is required in the agenda. And then the very last page, 55, this is just bringing our policy into practice with the way that we already handle public comments at libraries. So this is just it's making it clear how people can make public comments. They have to abide by the rules of behavior. They should sign up in advance, and giving the president or other presiding officer the ability to interrupt people if they're disrupting the peace at the library. There's a very small number of situations in which you can bar people from public meetings. They have to have disrupted the peace at the meeting. So even if someone has been trespassed from the library, if they want to come to a library board meeting, they are allowed to do so, unless they have disturbed the peace at the board's meetings. So this has been vetted by council. If you have any feedback or concern about this here, one other thing to make sure is at the bottom, it says that if anyone needs an accommodation to be able to participate because of any sort of a disability, it says how they can set that up, and we can work with them to find something that works for them. And also making it clear that there is a mechanism by which anyone can email the board at any time, and that will go into the packet. Any comments or questions about that?
I do.
Yes.
I'm worried about with 7. I think last time we talked about this. I have a hang up with civil language. I don't know what that means. I would really love to see that be changed to something more like legally protected.
Okay.
For instance, like hate speech.
All right.
Absolutely, like we should prevent that. And I would also just point out that, and I say this as a board member, I agree that there should be no personal attacks against the employees. I don't know if running for public office and being a public servant, we can really just say you can't do that to me. I think it's kind of people's right to criticize. I think if we're bringing things like hate speech into here, absolutely we should have rules around that. But I think civil language is I don't know if we have a legal definition of that, and I don't know how much that holds up.
Okay.
So that's just something to point out.
Sounds good. I will ask council about that and see if we can, because there's some language about like breach of the peace that appears in other places, which is similarly mushy, but more of a term of art.
Sure, yeah, and I mean, I understand, you know, for the record, ideally, everyone's coming up here and out of love, but should we have people not, I also think the people coming up there to do that kind of thing might be privy on the law and be like, this is not a protected language.
Yeah. Okay,
So I want to set us up for success
Yep.
in this policy where we have something really concrete.
great. Thank you. Any other comments on this?
Just page 55 or more broadly?
More broadly.
I think, I need some time to digest maybe some of this, but one thing that stood out to me in the changes around user responsibilities, you know, pages 30, 31.
Yes.
Supportive of the changes or removals that have been proposed here, but a couple of the other things on the list I think could use another look maybe.
Sure.
I heard you mention the law a little bit, but when I read, you know, refraining from altering or damaging software data residing in the internet, computer science students, I don't know, like people
Yeah.
are doing stuff to software within the context of applications. Same with if I'm removing personal data from a website, am I not destroying data? You know, so
Right.
so that struck me as potentially outdated. And same with computer worms or viruses.
Yep.
Is it malware now? Like, I mean, okay, so if it's something other than a worm or a virus, but still in the same spirit. So I think
That's good.
my only comment is if there's more we can do to update the language in that section, I would support that.
Great, thank you. Any other comments or concerns?
I appreciate the inclusivity with the switch to adults and parenting. I think that's excellent, and I appreciate you doing that. And I really appreciate the disability access thing in our public comment. I think that's really important to have that boldly out there and right where people can find it. So I just wanted to say that I really loved that in this. Thank you.
So feel free to take a deeper look through this. Our next item of business is to cancel the December meeting, so we will bring this again in mid-January, so you've got plenty of time to look over this if you have any other notes or concerns. And our hope would be to bring it forward to the whole bundle for approval in January, but we can certainly approve partial parts of it if some of it needs more conversation, any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, just to elaborate on my earlier comment of needing to digest, I mean, I haven't gone through this with a fine tooth comb.
Sure.
And I know there's some large sections where everything's being removed, so I just want to do some due diligence to put eyes
Of
on
course.
those. But I'm not anticipating much more than what I've already noted.
Okay?
Great.
Thank you all very much for your feedback.
All right, thanks, Eli. Next up, we've got a vote to cancel the December 16th, 2024 regular board meeting. Can I get a motion to cancel the December 16th board meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion aside from it's December? Let's not.
It's December. It's been a long November.
It's been a very long
I'll miss you all
November.
very much, but I'll see you in the new year.
We often cancel our December meetings, so standard. Great. All those in favor of canceling the December 16th, 2024 meeting, please say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed? Meeting is canceled. All right, next up, we have another round of public comments. Do we have any public comments? All right, great. Then we will see each other in the new year. Meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.